to actually kill your stepson and then go drive him across the country.
She tells police that her stepson went to a friend's home and then never came back home.
The only way that we protect all those other children is that we hold the system accountable.
Go from stepmom special needs teacher to killing your stepson without anything happening in between.
It just wasn't adding up.
Thanks for watching the Crown of Justice Report today. I'm Rainey Romero. Happy Tuesday. Today we're talking about the murder trial, which is set to start on Monday for Letecia Stauch. Welcome back. Thanks for joining us. We are here with attorneys Sarah Austin, Sharday Crawford, and Amy Lawrence. How you doing, ladies?
Good. We're good.
We're ready to talk murder.
Yes.
Again.
It's all about murder, which you think we would be tired of talking about.
Well, murder is easier to talk about when it's not yours.
Right, of course, yeah.
When it's not your case and it's a lot easier to talk about.
It's easier to speculate for sure than
you can remove it. It's almost like it's not
we
real.
can armchair it,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Armchair expert it from over here.
Right. Well, but I mean, interestingly, sadly, I don't really know how to say that, but like true crime is huge right now. I mean, everybody is so interested in these true crime stories. I mean, why do you think that is? Is it just because it's hard to believe?
We've seen 5,000 episodes of Law and Order.
Yeah.
Never the same one ever. Never a rerun. But it's like that in real life. You know, we want to see what it looks like in real time, in real life, with real people.
Yeah. I think it's the shock of it,
And
too.
also I think all of the most recent ones, I mean, the ones we've talked about have had some kind of connection to Horry County, and Myrtle Beach, which is crazy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But
Kind
it's
of
close to home.
freaky.
Yeah, kind of creepy, but close to home.
But yeah, I think, these true crime stories are now almost like the new thrillers or something. You know what I mean? It's weird to say.
I always giggle at those memes or like those reels or TikToks or whatever, and it's like, just me, Mama 4, listening to my murder podcast and drinking my iced coffee.
Yeah. Well, I think that might be part of it too. It's kind of like a scandal, and
it's
kind
not
of like
yours,
the shock of hearing of these, that people actually do this. But it also is freaky, which is why I feel like people are also developing all this anxiety and stuff in the world as well. But anyway, so Letecia Stauch, she has a connection to Horry County because she was an Horry County teacher, right?
Yeah, I think she's from Loris.
Okay.
She was a special needs teacher here, which is terrifying.
Well, she had a couple different positions, and I think the last one was
Horry
special
needs teacher.
Yeah.
Kills child.
Which is, disturbing to say the least, for sure. Sharday, I'm going to start with you because I know you know a lot of the details of kind of this case. Kind of walk us through what happened.
So Letecia Stauch was living in Colorado back in January of 2020 when her 11-year-old stepson is reported missing. She tells police that her stepson went to a friend's home and then never came back home. And so for the next 2 months, Colorado starts investigating, and they're doing this mass search for this little boy. They're contacting witnesses, they're walking neighborhoods, and even after a month, once the son was not found, they expanded the search to another county that was adjacent to where he was reported missing. But during this time, police are still asking questions of Letecia, the stepmother, and something just wasn't adding up. So when they were asking her, well, what friend's house did he go to? She couldn't answer. And I guess once they started to push her on where he went and why she didn't have these details, she then changed her story. And her story went to, actually, a Hispanic man came into the home, raped me, and then kidnapped my stepson. And so they're like, okay, well, why wasn't that the initial call to 911? And she's like, well, I didn't. And so they started trying to get her to cooperate so that they could get more information, like forensic information, to try to corroborate her story and to still find this little boy. And they couldn't. And then lo and behold, Letecia leaves Colorado And next thing you know, she's found in Myrtle Beach. And Myrtle Beach extradites her. They charge her. And then Myrtle Beach extradites her and she goes back to Colorado. And then about 18 days after she's extradited and arrested in Myrtle Beach, they found the body of her 11-year-old stepson in Florida, where they also confirmed that she had been prior to going to Myrtle Beach. So apparently there was some blood found in the home of Leticia. There was blood on the mattress, blood on the walls, and some video footage that showed that there was a car that left from the home where a driver and a passenger was in it. But when the car came back, there was only a driver and no passenger. And so this has sparked the start of this, case from January of 2020 now. And it's scheduled to go to trial next week.
Burn her to the ground.
Yeah, and I think it's been interesting about how it's taken so long, because I think I read they found a bunch of evidence, but they're not being very clear. I don't know if it's because they're saving it for trial or what, but they found some blood on her shoe, a gun involved in it. So we're assuming he was shot. There's not a lot of details, but she originally pled guilty and then withdrew her guilty plea and pled not guilty by reason of insanity, and then has undergone these several, I think at this point, competency tests. And from what we know so far, she's been deemed competent to stand trial unless something changes in the next week. And then it will start on April 3rd. But that's why it's taken so long. And I don't think she's disputing at this point that she did it. She's kind of said she did it.
But essentially, once she changed her plea, she's saying, I did it. But at the time that the act was committed, that she was insane. And so the original evaluations that she's had 2 at this point have said she's competent to stand trial, which is a separate standard and a separate evaluation than what happens when you're evaluated for whether you were competent at the time of the act. Because at the time of the act, you have to actually go to what happened at that time, the interactions of people around her, if she was seen by any physicians at that time.
Did she have psychosis? Was she on medicine?
To really determine whether or not she was competent when committing the act. And so apparently, after all this time has passed and COVID has delayed trials, and, by her own doing, when she's been dissatisfied with counsel, then saying that she wanted to represent herself, to the judge saying, no, you're not going to represent yourself. I mean, obviously, if you're saying not guilty by reason of insanity, and then to appoint new defense counsel, who then has to hire an expert to do an evaluation, and the evaluation, no report has been presented to the other side. At this point, the judge is like, we're 3 years later. You guys are gonna put a report on my desk by this time so that the state can hire an expert and we can move forward with this trial. This trial is going to start next week. And we're going to go from there.
To be 3 years in and to still be waiting on a report from the defense that's to show some sort of mental incompetence in this moment, and we still don't have it, is kind of insane.
Yeah.
Which tells me they're probably not going to have one.
Yeah.
Because I think she made that, she put in that plea herself, pro se. It was a lawyer didn't get up there and give it for her and didn't assert it. I think it was she was doing it, which tells me it's bullshit. So we're not going to see it. I don't think we're ever going to get that report from a licensed doctor that says that she was insane at the time of the murders. I don't think it's going to come. And I think this trial is going to start, and she's going to be found guilty.
I just feel bad for her current lawyer, because it feels like, I never want to blame the defendant, but here the delay has been
all her
changing her mind, and she's complained about all of her lawyers. She's going to do it herself, and so now her current lawyer has got this case, and he's got to represent her the best that they can. And I don't know. I mean, I feel like it's going to be difficult 3 years later to go back and prove that she was insane at that time. It would have been easier to do closer to the act.
In these kind of cases, when we see people trying to represent themselves, they appoint a lawyer, but she will be able to ask the questions and do those things, but there will be a lawyer there to guide her along the way, I guess. So I feel really sorry for that attorney.
Who's trying to get that report and prove that she was insane at that time.
He's doing his or her
it's
job.
Like almost impossible,
but that's like the
to
total short end of the stick and the short straw of life that you got drawn on that one. That's got to be so hard.
Well, and I'm just trying to, I'm kind of looking at the timeline of things, and I'm curious kind of what brought her back to Myrtle Beach, because she worked as the Horry County teacher back in like 2010 to like 2015. She reported him as missing in 2020.
I think her family was here.
So she was here first.
Yeah.
Okay, well that would make sense if her family was here, but yes, this happened in 2020 that he was first reported missing.
And this is her stepson, so where is Dad? I don't think I've read anything about.
I didn't see anything about him.
Yeah.
Him or his opinion, or
I think we heard from him in the very beginning when he thought us, and he didn't think she had anything to do with it because
were they still
we
together?
never want to believe that. I think they were together.
Yeah.
And he just, he really believed her in the very beginning, because why would you not? Who would want to believe that somebody could hurt your child that you, especially somebody you chose, you know what I mean, to bring into their life. Which brings up for me, so we see this, and it's called the Cinderella effect. And the Cinderella effect is when you remarry and and you have children, the chances of a step parent abusing a child goes up 100%. And that's crazy. So when you allow people in your life and you have children, it's one thing if you're single, you do whatever you want to do. You put your own life at peril, right? But when you have children, you have this duty to protect them, and you got to make sure that you're bringing someone in their life that is just, the best.
Horrible.
Which who would ever think that here's a special needs teacher.
Yeah.
You would think that she's like a walking little angel.
Yeah.
If everything was good. I didn't see anything about like the relationship between the stepmom and son, or not that it matters, because it's clear. I think justice will be served, I hope, because it seems, even just reading about it online, that they have a ton of evidence against her, and that she's kind of already admitted that she did it. Whether she's crazy or not is insane or not is still to be determined. But it would be interesting to know sort of the backstory, how they got to Colorado, because I'm just assuming that she went there with her husband and her stepson.
Right.
Yeah.
And then fled. Were they separating? Was it contentious?
Right.
Like what?
And then for the remains to be found in Florida.
Yeah.
And then her be arrested here.
Yeah, and for her to do that by herself.
Yeah.
It's one thing, I know the Cinderella effect and the abuse and stuff, but to actually kill your stepson and then go drive him across the country,
his body,
is like a wild thing.
Yeah, you're right, because you're saying that the blood was found in the Colorado home.
Right.
Yes. And then his remains were found in
which
Florida.
means he had been dead for quite some time.
She had taken him there.
His body.
Yeah.
Which is...
And that's why they also charged her with tampering with the body and things.
Yeah, so she has... she was arrested in Myrtle Beach March of 2020. So I think very soon after. I mean, she first reported him missing in January, and then she was charged in Myrtle Beach in March. But she's charged with first-degree murder, child abuse resulting in death, tampering with a deceased human body, tampering with physical evidence, 8 counts of crime and violence, or crime of violence, and attempted escape. So she has a lot.
So we do. So I kind of want I want to preface this conversation with, I want people the people who watch this to understand that while we do criminal defense in this firm, we do not take cases where people hurt women, children, old people, or animals. So I do a lot of DUI work, and we're very particular about the cases we take, and part of that is that we protect women and children and old people and animals. And that's why we represent victims in those cases, to make sure that they have a voice and they're able to tell their story and get their justice, whatever that looks like for them. So when we hear these stories, especially where we have victims who are children, it really, really gets me, and it gets us. So we are pro-prosecution in these cases, very hard. And I just can't even wrap my mind around hurting a child. It's beyond my comprehension.
Yeah, it just feels like there's a lot of the story that's missing. So I'm hopeful that will come.
Well,
come out, and that this kid will get justice, and his dad, and whatever's going on there.
Well, and I wouldn't be surprised if it did come out that there was a history of child abuse prior to this happening. But yeah, I mean, a lot of, again, with many of the stories, it's not fully finished. We're waiting on these trials, we're waiting on evidence to come out. So these are details that are still, surfacing. But his name was Gannon. I think it's nice to say his name. His name was Gannon, the 11-year-old.
Just a little boy,
little 11-year-old. Yep. And I think the thing that is so upsetting, I mean, there's a lot of reasons why hurting a child is upsetting, of course, but they're so defenseless at that age. You know what I mean? It's kind of like, same thing with animals and the elderly population. It's kind of like you really have to be a real piece of work to hurt somebody who is so
sickest
defenseless
of the sick to be able to hurt. People
who literally cannot hurt you back.
They can't hurt you back. You're many times bigger and stronger and whatever. And a lot of times they trust you as an adult. And so it's just, when you really think about it, it's just disgusting.
And I keep thinking about, like, this is a lady who was a special needs teacher.
In our county, in my head,
like, you just don't start. Like, this kind of stuff just didn't, like, come about. Like, there's, like, usually a history of stuff that's wrong here. And I think that everybody needs to take a long look at her history and all the children that she has touched to see if there was any kind of, because you just don't start this kind of stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you just don't go from 0 to killing an 11-year-old and driving the body across the country.
Well, I think there's been a lot of stories here recently too, where teachers and daycare workers and all, have been getting called out and getting in trouble because
we represent children who are abused.
People who
in our community.
People that are doing wrong
by the people who are supposed to
in the
protect
school
them.
system. Yes. And so I think that there also needs to be a look at how are we vetting these teachers that are working.
Yeah, because so often with abusive teachers, excuse me. And we see this especially with police, but we're also seeing it with these teachers, is that instead of documenting whatever's going on, they just kind of, like, we call it passing the trash. They let them resign in lieu of termination, and then they go on to do it to other children because they're all afraid of the liability of it. So instead of doing the right thing, because, I always say every day, if we just did the right thing, the rest follows. Because we can all wrap around, one person doing something bad, and then everybody doing whatever it takes to stop it from ever happening again. But what we can't wrap our mind around is the cover up of it, the lack of accountability, and then allowing them to go on and hurt other people, especially children. So I think that's the part that just these are the things that keep me up at night, that we're not doing what we need to do to protect every kid that comes after that.
Well, and it's such, on the other side of that too, I mean, I don't know how teachers, we are grateful for you, because I don't know how you do what you do. But on the other side too, say that Gannon was kind of being abused. There's also that flip side of things, of teachers kind of caught in the middle of reporting these children that they see being abused, but also not much getting done. I don't know if you guys saw, I think they did a documentary on it. I couldn't watch it, but I knew some of the details. It was a Hispanic little boy.
We can't talk about it.
Do you know what I'm talking about that?
Yeah, we cannot talk about it.
Okay. But,
I'll start crying.
No, I don't want to talk about the details of that. No, I don't want to talk about the details.
I can't.
But it was kind of like the system failed him, right? And this happens to children all the time, where you see children that are abused and teachers sometimes do report it, like sometimes they don't, and that's a different discussion, but sometimes they do report it. And not much gets done, and I just don't know.
Which is why we do what we do.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to say the biggest cases we've ever had, but, like, probably I think the most important cases we've ever had are system failures.
Yeah.
In school system, in police departments, and they are so important. It's like when a teacher reports abuse, and it gets to DSS and they don't do anything about it, it just gets, like, shoved in the back of the. The only way that we protect all those other children is that we hold the system accountable. And so that's why it is so important. And then on the flip side, when we have teachers that are getting disenchanted, or they're trying not to cover for themselves, or whatever it looks like, and they don't report it, and we see that, we represent kids who it wasn't reported, special needs kids who it wasn't reported. It's a system failure as well. And so, and I tell parents all the time, they're like, oh, we don't want to sue, or we don't want to do this. And I'm like, it has nothing to do with money. It has everything to do with fixing a system so we protect every child. Because, and we say it every time we have this, I say it, that of which we do not acknowledge, we cannot change. And if we don't call out the bad behavior and we don't fix the system, then it's never going to change. And sometimes the only way we can do that is by suing people and hitting them in the pocketbook, because I can't put the system in jail. But how I can change it is I hit them so hard that it makes them have to change, because they don't want to ever have to write that check again.
And I think that's why whenever I hear, even a case like this, I'm not, sometimes it just is the evil step-parent who, and maybe she was insane at the time that she did this. I think you almost have to be insane to do something like this. Yeah. Sometimes it's that, but most of the time there are signs, and you can play Captain Hindsight from our position when something horrible happens and go back and look and say, well, what in Gannon's life could we have seen that would have prevented this from happening to him? And so whether it's something, we're just speculating now. Yeah. But for me, it doesn't sit right that you go from stepmom special needs teacher to killing your stepson without anything happening in between.
Without nothing happening before.
Yeah, and so I'm not sure, and that's why I said, brought up dad. Maybe he knows something, or teachers, but I hope that they're taking a look at what was going on here. And if it was just evil stepmom and it's 100% her responsibility, then she will pay the price for that, I'm confident. But hopefully there's a good look at how this all transpired, because I don't think that I've seen. I think that's where I'm looking. I'm reading articles and I'm trying to see what the heck,
what failed along the way.
Yeah, how did we get to this point?
Because we know there's had to have been some kind of red flag.
Yeah. How did we get
I've
to
done
this
enough
point?
abuse and neglect cases where
it just come out.
These are not anomalies. It's not like, and if it is, it usually is like psychosis or something like insanity, whatever that looks like. But usually it's not. 99.9% of the time, there are red flags that have went up, and everybody, nobody wants to be the witness to the car wreck, so that nobody makes eye contact. And it's such a disservice because an 11-year-old kid pays the price for it. In the most horrific
where did
of ways.
we fail?
Where did we as a society fail?
Yeah.
Because that's what we all really need to look at.
Yeah.
That's the bigger picture here, is because I can't fix what happened to Gannon, but I can fix everything I can't attempt to fix and want to fix all the other Gannons that come after him.
Yeah.
We all have to do better.
Just speaking from how this process will work on from a law perspective. So, she has her jury selection and the trial starts on Monday. Sade, you and I were kind of chatting that no evidence or anything will be presented until early April, though.
That's what they're anticipating.
Okay. So how does let me ask you this: jury selection, does that happen with every trial, or is that just like murder trials?
No, you select a jury with every
with
jury
every trial, no matter how small,
unless you have a bench trial.
Yeah.
And a bench is just with a
jury
judge.
Trial, yes.
But those are rare and usually just a magistrate court. Every once in a while you'll have a listen, I'm not trusting one, and it's usually a man, on one penis on a on a stand.
Maybe.
When I can have the choice of 12 random strangers, like convincing them. You know what I mean? I got better odds. Sorry.
Yeah.
And I say that with all the respect in the world. I joke, and the judges know me, and they know where my heart is, so they know I kid. But
it's just odds.
It's just odds.
1 versus 12.
I wasn't good at math in
I want to have different
but
perspectives.
I know I have better odds with 12 than I do 1, right?
Yeah.
So you don't see that very often, especially when we're talking about high crimes, not just misdemeanors. Sometimes you'll see that in misdemeanor court, but rarely do you ever see that in felony court when you're looking at really serious crimes.
Okay.
So we pick a jury of 12.
Does the ratio of male to female matter?
Only to me.
There's not like a requirement?
No.
Gotcha.
No, but there is a requirement that constitutionally you have a right to have people in your jury pool that look like you. So if I am, as a white woman, I get to have white women in my jury pool. And the same thing for, matter of fact, my heart breaks for people of color when I see a black man in South Carolina who's going to go up and I look and there's a jury of all white people. My stomach curdles for them. You know what I mean? Because
and I think
you have
it's the way. Have you ever done jury duty, Rainey?
No, I haven't.
So the way that you select a jury, right, is they call in like a ton of people from the county that you're from.
300
That's
people.
called your jury pool.
Yep.
That's your jury pool. And then it kind of gets dwindled away. So the judge will ask qualifying questions, and some people just don't qualify to be on the jury. Like if you're over 65, you can choose not to serve on the jury. You can get out of it. Or you can choose to stay.
Yeah.
If you've got to there's all sorts of special circumstances.
Right.
And so then by the time that's what jury selection is. So then the pool gets dwindled down and dwindled down. And so where the rules come in about, you have the right to have people who look like you on the jury, you can't you've got a prosecutor who's prosecuting a black man, strikes all the black people on the jury.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Sarah, for making me now look at the idea.
Well, I think we just jumped to the next phase, right? So if you got Amy's the defendant and they strike all the women, then that's going to be a motion and a whole big thing.
But then don't even get me started on the fact motion. Let's just go ahead, because I think...
but when you're kind of screwed when the jury pool comes in and there's only 3 black people in the big pool.
Oh, yeah.
There is because that's what my problem is.
So they might get striked for other disqualifying.
They might be 3 black people over 65.
Yeah.
In our
it
county,
happens all the time.
You know, and I can only speak to this one because that's what I see, you know, but the pool does not have people that look like me in the pool. And so when you start talking about selection, and if the defendant happens to be black, you're just, how, if the pool only had 4 and then we qualified and we have 2 that are qualified, and then we go through questions, or now the next pool only had 1 and then 1 is stricken. So how do we have something that
are you able to
diverse?
Request another, like, more in the pool? Because if you have a right to people that look like you, then...
So I know that when we were trying cases, especially during COVID, where you had lots more, the judiciary was listening to you a lot more. We were petitioning and filing motions in order for the jury pool to be bigger, because COVID impacted the jury pools. And then at the same time, I know one of the defense attorneys here was doing like was the Bingo Hall murders. And he filed all these motions in order to make sure that the clerk of court was, because that's who pulls the jury pool, made sure that they were as diverse as possible. And so there are things that come into play, but honestly, I shouldn't have to fight that hard to have a diverse pool. It's not that hard.
Right.
You pull from driver's licenses and registered voters. Just give me a diverse pool. It shouldn't be that hard.
Yeah, and when you look around Horry County, we're a diverse county.
Right.
So, you walk into a store and it's not 90% white people and 2 black people, but when you call a jury pool, for some reason, that's what shows up.
I remember after the Bennett trial that we had, I was all like hopped up on like civil justice, and not that I'm not always, but of what civic duty really looks like. And I begged a reporter to do a story. I was like, will you please do a story on how important it is for everybody to be represented in a jury pool, and to please take show up for jury duty and don't try to get out, because it really matters. It really, really matters. And he was like, there's nothing sexy about that.
Yeah. Wah, wah, wah. My daughter, as part of one of her college classes, she had to go sit in general sessions and observe it. And so she was there for what happened to be a murder trial. And she sat through opening arguments, and then had to sit through a couple witnesses and mark down her thoughts in order to share with her professor. And so I like to ask the layperson. I told her, asked her to tell me what she thought about it. And one of the things that she said was, "Mama, the defendant was black, and there was 1 black person on the entire jury." And she said, and as I sat there and I looked at that jury, I felt like he wasn't going to get a fair shake of it. And then she made her comments about, the state and the defense or whatever. But, and I said, look,
she's probably right.
You're seeing that, and she said, he's accused of killing a young white boy as well. And so she was like, I just feel like the way that they were looking, it was like they weren't even going to give him a chance, And I said, okay. And, it's me trying to push her
heart.
But when they say like racism is systemic, it's because of that, because the jury pool does not reflect the diversity of the community. And so it starts there. And that's why people say the system is
representation
racist.
Really matters.
So yeah.
And you don't even realize
big.
I think, for us, because I got into I remember getting into it, like, really, me and my dad button heads pretty hard, because he couldn't see past his own experience, you know what I mean? And I started, like, giving him examples of things that I've seen in court that, like, the majority of the world would never see. this is what racism looks like up close and personal, like for me. And these are the things that I see. And this is why, like, I know that judges, I drive them crazy because I insert myself into a lot of cases that a lot of cases. We all do. But like, I'm like the volunteer public defender sometimes. I'm like, I'll talk to them. They don't want to do that. I want to put my 2 cents in. But we see these things happen. And people don't even realize that it's going on. They don't want to believe that it happens because they can't see, just like my dad couldn't see past his own experience. And so when I sat down and he really listened to me and I explained, like, these are the things that I've seen just this week, it's hard to wrap your mind around. And it really blew his mind. It's kind of like when I saw a congressman arguing that he's never seen a hungry child before.
Geez, that was the worst thing I've ever read.
And I was like, oh.
Have you left your house?
Right. And I'm like, no, there are hungry people. There are hungry children, and they are all around us. You just have to open your eyes to see them. But it's that kind of mentality that you can't see past your own experience. And we see it in the court system up close and personal, not just with defendants, but in family court with children and abused children and victims. And it's so important to talk about because if we don't talk about it, we can't change it.
Yeah, because I think that, even as Amy and I could go sit on an all-white jury and we would be like, we can absolutely totally be fair here. Like, we're going to be fair to this Black man on trial. Yeah. But when you have 12 white people with no other experience than white people, which is what we are, you're missing that anyway. So that's why it's the system. You look at each individual person as Amy's dad's not a bad person. That's his experience.
And sometimes even it's just, a knowledge about an area. One of the first cases that I tried when we were, alleging that the alleged victim was in an area where she was dating, she had a child with the defendant. And, part of it was that she's making these allegations because really they're in a family court suit. And by making these allegations of domestic violence, she wins, right? But you came up to General Sessions, you came up to the criminal floor, you didn't come to the family court floor. And so what we're trying is a criminal case and not a family court case, But one of the things that really mattered in the case was about the area that she came to, which she came to the recreation center where he played basketball every day that was across the street from his grandmama's house in the Black community that she was not a part of, and came with the child and then said, nope, you can't see the child. And so at the end of presenting the case, when the case actually went to the jury, one of the alternates was a Black woman. And so when it went back to the jury, they relieved her as an alternate. And I just ran out in the hallway, caught her and said, hey, if you don't mind, would you tell me what you would have decided? And she had told me that she would have said not guilty. And I said to her, okay, well, why? And what she said was, I'm from that community. I know that area. I know where she was. She didn't live there. You guys told me she lived 30 minutes away. That's not the community she lives in. She had no reason to be there. And she said, and I know that building. And if she had felt like she was in danger, she could have called out and people would have come running. And I know that. That is why we need diversity.
Those different perspectives.
Right.
Because otherwise you don't have that person in that room to tell everybody else and give the Amy and Sarah's knowledge about that area. Otherwise we have no idea.
Yeah. So...
I love that you told that story and puts it in perspective. Well, we went down a different rabbit hole for that.
Sorry, guys. Did not see this one coming. I'm sorry.
But I feel like that all of that, even just the knowledge of jury selection in general and how important it is to serve on jury.
Please.
Yeah.
Show up for jury.
And don't try to get out of it.
No.
Yeah.
I wish somebody would put me on a jury. Put me in, coach. Put me in.
I literally live for the moment that somebody will put me on a jury.
I know. Every time my friends I've got jury duty, I'm like, you're going to jury duty and you need to be there and you need to pay attention.
I would like to serve,
sir. One of the highest things that you can do, your civic duty, is to show up.
Yeah.
It so matters. Representation matters. Show up. Be active and present and participate because it really matters.
I love it. All right, ladies, thank you guys so much for watching today. Again, we'll keep you updated on Letecia Stauch. That is set to start this coming week for trial. So we'll keep you updated on that. As always, please let us know if you have questions, comments, if there's a story that you want us to chat about on the next episode, or a topic that you aren't sure about that you'd like us to cover. Just let us know. We'd be happy to do that. You can visit us online at justiceislovely.com. Also, we're on all of your social media channels, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks so much for watching the Carolina Justice Report today, and we'll see you next Tuesday.
When life gets ugly, justice is love.